So thanks, Mayan, for coming on. It's great to get to talk to you. I, Cody, I actually messaged. Oh, you had a manager. I don't know if you still do, but you had a manager like a while ago. I can't remember her name, but you used to have an email contact on your Instagram, and I emailed you. I emailed that email address. Oh, like 2 years ago, and I got a reply um, from a female, but I can't remember what her name was. It's
Nora.
annoying. Yes. And she was
Yes.
like, I was like, oh, do you want, like, would he be interested in? And she was like, oh, that sounds like something you might be interested in. And now 2 years later, on a completely unrelated thread, here we are.
It's the way it
um,
works. I'm glad I made it though.
oh yeah, I'm delighted to have you. That probably sounded bitter, and it wasn't intended to.
No, not
Um,
at all.
so it's great to talk to you. Exciting time for, I guess I don't call it Romwod anymore. I guess I call it pliability now. Is that right?
Soon to be.
Soon to be. Yeah, it's exciting. We'll get into the brand, and we'll get into the changes and how you guys came to be there and everything in a little bit. But did you get married recently, Cody?
Not yet. Next month. I'm engaged.
Wow. Okay. So how's planning for that going?
With this, and we're moving apartments in New York City. It's been a lot this month for sure.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah. Everything's a bit busy, but it's all going really well. Yeah.
When did you get engaged?
So we got engaged about 2.5, 3 months ago now.
Wow.
But we've
Okay.
been together. So we met in London about 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
And
Like a CrossFit thing or something different?
no, not at all. Not at all. I was actually living in London for about 8 weeks. We met with about 2 weeks left. Her name's Gabia. She has no idea what CrossFit is. None of that. Didn't. I mean, she does now because of the space that I obviously live in and work in. But before that, she didn't, and that was kind of like a fresh breath of air for me. It was very
Yeah.
nice to experience that, and no, it's been great though. So we're very excited. Yeah, we get married September 9th.
Oh, that's cool. And where are you getting married? In New York?
No, we're getting married in Kauai, Hawaii.
Wow.
Yeah, so
That's
it's
cool.
gonna be her and I and the person that does the marrying and then a photographer. But it's just gonna be two of us, and then hopefully in like a year and a half or two, we'll throw more of like a celebration kind of ceremony where because she's from originally from Lithuania,
Okay.
so we need to kind of like give a pretty
Yeah.
decent time frame of an invitation just so people can kind of book the flights and plan for the trip. So we just wanted to do something special between her and I, and then we'll actually have a full on ceremony probably later on down.
Cool. So that's like eloping, basically, isn't it? That's cool.
Yeah, it's nice. We're excited. We're excited to just kind of have the day for us, and no outside stressors, and it just be kind of her and I.
Yeah, I remember when we got married. So this is a great tip for how to get married. Nothing marriage related, because I'm not one to give advice. You can just ask my wife. I'm not one to give advice on marriage. But after we got married, anytime within about 6 months, for the 6 months after we got engaged, and then I was like, I can't do this anymore. And then we got married, and I did it for another 6 months. Then I was like, I can't do this anymore either. But anytime we went anywhere, I'd email ahead and be like, we just got engaged. Like, technically true, technically not true. Or I'd be like, we just got married. I'd be like, like any first class flights available.
Yeah,
So I think we got sometimes we got like chocolates in our hotel room and stuff. But like, I think we got upgraded to suites and stuff a couple of times. But like,
that's really cool.
I never lied. Like, technically, I never lied. I wasn't specific with the time frame. I said like we just got married. They didn't know it was 18 months ago, but like I just in the scale of my life, as a fraction of my life, it was recently. Whereas
it's
on a
very
calendar
recent.
it wasn't. Yeah.
No,
And what's your story, Cody? Then with coffee, I think have I seen you posting some stuff about? Are you into coffee?
Yeah, so recently, I mean, I didn't get into coffee. So I lived in New York City back kind of 2018, 2019 when I was competing on the team with Alec and Jess and Camille that year. So I was in New York City then as well. And I didn't drink coffee my whole life up until then because I was coaching such early classes. And people are like, and I was just like struggling. People are like, you got to start drinking coffee. And in New York, coffee obviously is massive. So members would start bringing it in the morning. And that's where I started drinking. So now, yeah, I do. I definitely watch my caffeine intake daily. So usually it's 1 cup, maybe like a cup and a half if I have one real early. But yeah, so I definitely drink coffee now.
What about you, Scott? Are you into coffee?
Yeah, it's. I had to decrease my caffeine intake quite a bit, but it's still a guilty pleasure. Definitely helps me get through the day.
Oh, what brought on decreasing? How high was it that you like had to decrease it? That's an aggressive way of phrasing it.
It actually plays into a much larger health and wellness story. But at one point, caffeine was driving my resting heart rate to about 114.
Wow.
So I went into almost complete like adrenal fatigue, and kind of led me to really reconsider my health and wellness habits. I was about 50 pounds heavier at the time and such, and just completely changed my outlook on various intakes. But
And what were you working at the time? Something stressful, I'm guessing.
yeah, I mean, I built, I've worked for myself since even high school. So 15, 16 years old, started my first business at 18. And so from about 18 until 29 or so, it was just pure like eat whatever, as much caffeine as possible, work as many hours as possible, kind of just no regard for what that was doing to my body. And I definitely hit a brick wall doing that.
What was your business when you were 18?
I started a web and graphic design company. It's actually the company that ended up acquiring Romwod.
Okay. And is that like, so explain that to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
So basically started building websites for lawyers, doctors, whoever needed a website
Okay.
to be online. And then we grew that to do like e-commerce websites and much more complicated projects, subscription-based websites. And then eventually we grew that business to a point where, I was tired of building my clients' businesses and decided that we would start building our own.
And that's the company, you said that's the company that acquired Romwod, is that what you said?
Correct.
That's a bit of a left field move, is it? How did that come about?
So Romwod was a client of this agency.
Okay.
The founders, the guys, the two brothers that came up with the idea for Romwod, one owned a yoga studio, one owned a CrossFit gym, literally right next to each other in California. And I had built the website for the yoga studio previously, so I had known them, and they came to me with Romwod. They were a client for 6 months, and I went to them and said, like, guys, I'd really like to figure out how to take this to the next level. Like, let me jump in. So the agency acquired Romwod at that time and operated it as managing partner since.
So they were like, "Oh, we need you to build us a website," and you were like, "I'll do you one better. I'll take over the company." And what's like? So you built your own company when you were 18. You started your own thing, and you were kind of like, by the sounds of it, grinding yourself into just dust, like burning the candles at both ends. And you're kind of. Sounds like you're all those stereotypes of like entrepreneurs who kind of go about it. I don't say the wrong way because it led you to a good place, I guess, but like an inefficient way, I suppose. And then you take over another company. Is it harder like starting something yourself, or is it harder taking something over and being like, like pulling up weeds and fixing getting things the way you wanted to do? Like, which is more difficult?
It depends on the business. I've done it in a few instances, and I mean, in the case of Romwod, it was just a really cool, like, the CrossFit market is so interesting. Like, I'd owned businesses in other markets with different types of customers, and what was interesting about CrossFit is just the way that you market to them and the way you get them to interact with that business is much different than most. So coming in and running that business was, I was coming from a place where I didn't know much about CrossFit at all, but I learned to love and appreciate it in a way that I don't think I would have if I wasn't exposed to it.
So you said that when you were 29, you kind of had a bit of a wake up call or whatever. did the timelines of these line up then? Was it like you had a wake up call and you kind of were like, oh, I need to get healthy or whatever, and then the Romwod opportunity came along at the same time, or is there a gap, or how does that line up?
No, so I'm 32 today. So
Oh, happy birthday.
I've been running Romwod since 2015. So what had happened was through like the first 5 or 6 years with Romwod, I was familiar with the community and was always encouraged to get healthier and such. And, I really didn't take heed of all the tools at my disposal, unfortunately. Yeah. And when I turned 29, I basically just hit some really, hard health realities. It's actually what led me to reaching out to Cody and asking for assistance in, just getting my life on track.
Was that around like COVID? Was that like 2020 somewhere? Yeah, because I remember seeing so during lockdown, so I followed Cody from when he was like competing, and that was my like realm of understanding who he was like competition floor. And then after, so you guys finished like second in 2019.
Yep.
And then after that, like, say from my perspective, I know this obviously isn't the case from yours because you were living it, but from my perspective, it was like 2019, and then Dubai was that year, wasn't it, with Danny and Alec? Was that year?
Yes.
Yeah,
but
so
that was before the games.
Okay, so before the games, December, yeah. Then the games. Then from my perspective, like poof, like Cody just vanished. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, and then you kind of just forget about people when you don't see them regularly, you forget. And then you started posting more stuff again. And I was like, who the hell is this guy that he's like training with all the time? And like, and I was seeing then I was seeing Scott and seeing who he was and seeing he was like somehow related to Romwod. And then I was like, is Cody working with Romwod? Like, you're trying to piece everything together from, like little snippets and stuff, and you're trying to figure out. And then, as far as I can tell, you more or less like lived together through that severe lockdown, we'll say, at the start. Is that fair?
Yeah. So we went back to where I grew up in Maine, and we both spent the time of lockdown in Maine just because of my kind of resources I had out there. I had a home gym that I had, and I just had a couple we had a family lake house that we could rent that was like a big place. And it was very remote, like in the woods where I grew up. So we had the ability to still kind of like focus on health and wellness and kind of get back to like a regrounding type of scenario, which we're very blessed to have, because for a lot of people, it was like a time where they got stuck inside in one little space. So that's kind of how the COVID transition went. And that was kind of like the transition of like my competition-ish years as well, like throughout that, where I personally knew competing was coming to an end. I kind of knew that probably the past 2 years that I was doing it. I just kind of stayed in it just because that's what I was doing with my friends. And it was just a way for like, I don't know, I think if you had been there, you can kind of speak for the athletes, where you finish a season, you're like, I don't know. And then before you know it, like, you either got to start making the decision to start training again because the Open's coming up real quick, or you're going to go find something else to do. So there's a couple of years of that. But then I think the 2019 transition gave me a really smooth transition to be like, okay, let me try to bring some other things into my life, and all the doors that like you have to say no to, because to be an athlete, I'm like, let me try saying yes to a couple and see kind of where that stuff takes me. And, like working with Scott and then working with Romwod as well was like two of those doors that were very interesting to me, just from a health and wellness standpoint, and also just from a, like a career and longevity standpoint as well.
So Scott, did you like reach out to Cody as in like, I don't want to call it a personal trainer, but like was that basically what you were looking for, was someone to turn things around for you, and you picked out Cody as someone who could help you do that?
I mean, I'd known Cody for years through the company.
Okay.
And we had traveled together on various company trips and such. And something I'd always noticed with Cody was like his capacity to do so much more, and not doing more than an athlete, but a personal capacity in working with people and teams. And it was something that, that I just always noticed. So basically when I started reviewing my health and getting serious about what to do, Cody came up in my mind because I wanted to build this scenario of like, you know, bilateral mentorship, right? Like I could help him with things and he could help me with things versus it just being a job. Like, hey, Cody, I want to hire you as a personal trainer. So I knew he had a lot of line goals, and it was approached more from a partnership perspective, you could say, in which I gave him the opportunity to learn as much as possible through the company and really assist, shaping where the company was going and helping me in managing it. And he was absolutely instrumental in helping me get my health and wellness on track as well.
It's remarkable, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Serendipitous, isn't that it? Like, where things just align. Because when you think about it, if you had waited an extra couple of months, probably would have been too late, because like you would have had lockdown. It would have all been like by email or by I'll help you, and Zoom.
There was even
like,
more things to that. Like we were out in LA. I was living in New York. We went from Wadapalooza to I went to New York. Scott went to LA. Then I flew to LA to film Romwods. COVID wasn't even a thing yet when I was in New York. The week that I was filming Romwods in LA, New York blew up with COVID. And Alec went home to Virginia because we were roommates at the time. And our lease was up at the end of March. So then I'm in LA with Scott and I'm debating. I'm like, do I go back to New York City or do I go back to Maine? And then LA starts to get bad. And Scott's like, well, what the heck? And I just started like writing him some programming, probably like a couple weeks before that. I was writing a program for him to do out there. And pretty much not jokingly, but like not thinking how long-term it would be. I was like, let's just go to Maine for maybe like a week or two. Yeah, like a week or two, like hopefully this thing blows over.
6 months later.
And yeah, like 6 months later, and then, 2 years later and all that. And it just became this, like my lease was up and Alec was like, I'm not moving back there right now. And I was like, I'm not either, because like our friends were stuck in apartments. So had someone move us out. And then I think 3 months later, Scott's apartment rental was up at the same. In LA was the same. So we were like, all right, we'll just kind of stay in Europe, because at that point we had a really good thing going where we could still work out. Like I said, we're very fortunate to have the space we did. So yeah, it was a very weird sequence of events and how it all played out and how it went down, for
sure. Cody, you had like an impressive athletic, like CrossFit athletic career, where like you were at regionals like 5 times, and we mentioned there you finished second in the Affiliate Cup, and that was like the year of the super team, wasn't it? The like 2019. That was like the big the last big super team year, I guess. And I suppose I was curious, like you mentioned Alec there, and I know you were friends with, I suppose there's like a group of like say 6 people that I can picture you amongst as like a kind of a group of athletes that hung out a lot together and stuff. And I was curious when you stopped doing that, because obviously there mightn't have been, it sounds like there wasn't a lot of fuel in your head to keep doing it, but there's obviously fuel in your body. Like you could have kept going if you wanted to keep going. You could have remained competitive. So I'm curious, like when you make the decision to stop, like, is it hard to maintain those relationships? Is it hard? Because like, is it like, when you leave a job and then you're kind of like, you're not at the same things anymore, you don't have the same opportunities to hang out, or has working with a company like Romwod kind of eased that transition a bit?
Working for Romwod obviously uses that transition because I get to stay in the space and I get to, still go to events and stuff like that. But even outside of that, a lot of my relationships that I built in CrossFit were through CrossFit, but not built off CrossFit. Alec and I, we're still best friends to this day. Like I was down in Virginia, I saw him a bit ago. Like we hung out at the games. Like we still talk weekly. And a lot of other people do the same thing. Jamie and Elliot. Like I was at their wedding. So a lot of my friends definitely I've met through CrossFit, but we had like really good foundations outside of the sport. But I think as any relationship, it just takes, especially with COVID and, not even traveling that much. I think it took a lot of people to be like, hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in a while. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because we used to joke, it'd be like a college reunion every competition you do, because you just see these people. And you expected to see these people, continuously throughout the year. So when that stopped, you had to put more effort into it. But I mean, it definitely was a transition. I had a lot of friends kind of like reach out to me and be like, hey, you want to do this competition? Hey, you want to do this? You want to do that? And I was just like, not right now. And I mean, competing for me is always one of those things. Like I go and I watch the games and I go out there and I see it. And I do miss it. I always miss being on the floor. Like I've competed in things since I could walk. It's just in my nature. And I think fitness is always something that will be in my nature as well. Like CrossFit and fitness and functional fitness and that intensity and the feeling you get became more of like a therapeutic thing for me. So I still train that way all the time. So I mean, I'll always stay fit, but I think the gravity of what an athlete has to, especially in CrossFit, has to surrender and give up a big portion of their life. That's the part I just wasn't willing to do anymore. And kudos to the people that continually do it, because it's remarkable to be able to do it year and year and year. But for me, I really, like I said, I wanted to be able to branch out in my life, and I'm just someone that's like not gonna try to hang on and give 40% there and 30% here. Like it's either gonna be I was gonna be all in there, or I was gonna really try to put some energy into other places, and that's just the path I chose.
Was it eased as well then? Because I know a lot of people, when they retire from any sport or any job, I guess, get kind of itchy feet after a couple of weeks, and they kind of think like, oh shit, like maybe I made a mistake. Was it eased with COVID and the fact that like nothing was happening anyway?
For sure. It was eased big time, because even that year, like the athletes, I was texting like a lot of my friends, like Patty and all those guys, and they were going through like online qualifier after online qualifier after online qualifier, like trickled down to like a couple people that went out to California, And for me, that was always like the worst part about competing, like the open, the online qualifier. Once you get to a stage, it was like, okay, game on, let's go. So it's definitely eased by that for sure. But I think it was something, like I said, it was a couple of years in the making. So I really had good opportunities to make a decision of like, I thought about this for a while. And then also, I mean, at that time I was 26 years old. So it's not like I couldn't go back to compete. I could still go back today if I wanted to. It'd take time to obviously, I'd have to go back on a training schedule, but like it was a decision that I made. So, and I thought about it quite a bit. So yeah.
It's interesting. I don't think there's many people that retire without, broaching masters yet, or like there's like you still had, but like it's interesting.
I was really the first wave of teenagers to compete in the sport. Like I remember being 16, and they took 62 people to regionals, and this was 2000 and I don't know, this was probably at time 2012 or so, 2013. 2012, and I finished like 63rd in the open. I missed it by one spot, but like I couldn't even go that year because my baseball coach, we had a doubleheader on that Saturday, and I was captain. He's like, yeah, you're not missing both games to go compete at this weird event.
Yeah, especially back then, he would have been like, what the fuck is that?
But like if you typed in that time the leaderboard, you could like filter down by age, and there was maybe like 10 of us that were teenagers in the country, in the world actually, that would compete at this kind of level, a couple of us guys. So I was really like kind of amongst the first age of teenagers to get into the sport. So yeah, it sounds early for me to retire, but I mean, that's a decade of like, I was going hard from a young age. And that was back in the days of CrossFit where we did like, you didn't do 7 pieces a day. You weren't training, so there's a lot of it in there. So yeah, for sure.
Do you think that's going to happen with people now? Like, do you see that happening with people like, I know I don't want you to speak for other people, but like, do you think that it's changed enough that people like, obviously Justin's been around a while, Mal has been around a while already, and they're only new to the senior end of it?
I think it'll definitely be a challenging thing as they grow up, because I feel like when you start so young into something, I mean, luckily fitness, it impacted my life in many positive ways, but it really does drive the narrative to how you live your life, especially when you're competing at that high level. So I think that there will be paths as they're growing up through the 20s and stuff like that, where they're like, do I want to experience a normal college life, or do I want to go play in a sports team? Like one of the first things decision I had to make was I was supposed to play college baseball, but I played fall ball coming into school. And then that spring was coming up and I was supposed to be training for baseball. And then regionals used to be that same time. So I went to my coach and I'm like, sorry, I'm not going to play baseball. I want to try to compete in this thing, and then qualified for regionals in 2004, like that year. So I definitely think that. And I think that also But I think the sport's different now. People are smarter. People train differently. They recover better. They take care of themselves more. There's a bit more of an off season where it used to be, we used to all watch like Day in the Life of Rich Froning, and he was doing like 9 workouts in a day. And we're like, okay, that's the standard. That's what we need to do. So I don't know. I mean, I think that each athlete would be different. But for me, definitely, I mean, I was 26 and I definitely felt like I competed for 10 years for sure. I felt it.
Yeah. You mentioned there, like, so Alec has come up a bit, and I know like you've got Tia and Pat, and you've got other athletes that are like, like Romwod athletes. And I was kind of curious about how do you guys pick who you want to use to represent the brand? Because there's similarities between all the people. Like if I look at like Cara, or I look at, Pat, like I can see similarities between them, but there's also like vast differences between them. So I was curious, like, what is it that you look for when you're thinking, okay, we need to bring someone on, or like it's time we bring someone on? Like, what are the qualities that you look for, or what are the core values that you want a person to have that you're working with?
I mean, I can genuinely say that every single one of our athletes was an organically built relationship. So they all happened over time. We'd be introduced through an event, or through different ways. And I can remember speaking with Cara months before we signed her. Same thing with Noah, and those relationships really built over time before we engaged as a business. But the primary qualifications that we had was be a good human. And I know that sounds just simple, but athletic capacity and who they were obviously drives the business decision. But for us, like, we've never fired an athlete, so these are long-term brand decisions on how we allow someone to represent and connect with our brand. And we took it pretty seriously early on. We still do, and it's just a matter of time and building those relationships.
There's obviously been change. So there's obviously change happening now, but like there's been change. I suppose you guys have known this has been coming. Like you didn't just wake up yesterday and decide, what we should do tomorrow. But like, I was curious, I suppose, with the changes that you're instigating, like, have they all been with this in mind? So like, say, I guess the first like domino to be pushed was probably Cody coming on, and then you move on from there, and you've got like, I know you hired like Fraser recently, and you've started using like Sam for some of your video stuffs, and that there's been a change in, what would you call it? Like a change in aesthetic or a change in feel to the videos. Are more kind of like fun and like like entertaining, I suppose. Like, have all of those changes been with this larger change in mind, or are they kind of convenient like things that have happened to fall into place?
I think you'll find that those are the pieces that we're starting to allow to be seen, but we've been working on this for several years. So this has been a very long-term play. CrossFit will always be home. Like, CrossFit as a community literally helped build our business. Like, that is something we'll always remain loyal to. But we recognized a few years ago that, our mission is really to take this larger, and that, it touches everyone. It touches the 16-year-old gymnast to the 70-year-old grandma that needs to pick up her grandkids. And we needed to reframe the company in a way that could adapt to that. So we started working several years ago on, just being really methodical, really researching and figuring out how we were going to do this and bring this forward. And what you're seeing today is, Sam and Fraser are great examples of recent additions, but within the past couple of years, we've actually tripled, if not quadrupled, staffing behind the scenes, and continue to grow the company. So for us, it's really been a long-term investment that we're just starting to peel back the layers on.
I spoke to the founder of LSKD there recently. So it's like a clothing brand in Australia, and they're kind of venturing into CrossFit. And he was telling a story about how it used to be like Loose Kid Industries and LKI, and then they changed to LSKD. And he was saying that it was just kind of an obvious thing that kind of happened, and then he kind of showed both people both names and was like, which is better, and everyone kept opting for LSKD. So he was like, well, I mean, it's not really my decision to make then. If everyone is picking this one, we just need to change. But that he was still nervous and he was still like worried, and it's like what if it doesn't work, what if it goes wrong? When you decide to change, like, I get moving into different sports and I get moving into different areas of life, and I get that it increases your reach and it increases your community size and your customer base and everything else. But like, changing a name is like, was there any kind of reservation about doing that? Because when you have something that's like if you walk into a CrossFit gym and say Romwod, I'd argue like 90% of people that are there are like, yep, like nobody's gonna be like, what? So it was the fear that you could walk up to a driving range and say Romwod and they wouldn't know what you're talking about. Is it to try and make it like a fresh start to include all of these other avenues? And then I suppose second to that was there ever a time where you were like, oh man, maybe we should just stick because it's comfortable and we have all our branding done and it's all ready to go?
I mean, there's definitely there's still nights that you really think about the strategy, but we're fully comfortable in it, and it comes through testing. I mean, when we looked at moving into other markets, the term WOD is such a CrossFit based term, and we love that, and we want to retain that as much in our product as possible and really retain that community. But for us to be able to expand and grow, it was simply the data, just like, as Katie asking about the names, what we found is, pliability really represents who we intend to be, as a broader product, and really kind of create, our own community around that mobility and recovery is not just a nice to have part of your training, but it's a necessity for life.
Do you think it gives you like, does it have extra gravitas, do you think, coming from you, maybe because like you were probably someone who neglected all of that and who didn't see it as not even a necessity, but like anyway valuable up until like you were about to turn 30? Do you think like, is it the position that you're speaking from, does it add weight, do you think, to what you're offering?
I truly hope so, because my personal experience, I mean, it's not only created a love for the company in a way that I didn't expect. What I originally took on as a business venture has become something that I know like affects change, not only for myself personally, but for others that I've been able to interact with through the company. But it really should just be a story of, this is like, just as people consider metabolic training, cardio, strength as core pieces of what they're doing. Mobility isn't just, it's not just injury prevention. It's not just, it feels good. Like, to be able to move when you're older, to be able to just move in general and perform these functions, human functions, really, you have to maintain that, just like you're maintaining strength or anything else.
So Cody, if I'm a Romwod user and I'm logging into my app on the 6th of September, I'll see it, the current iteration, like that, the familiar orange and black and white, the logo and everything else, and I'll navigate the app as I've become accustomed to. And then I wake up on the 7th. What, as an existing user, what do I expect to see? Obviously, it's going to be like, you need to update this app or whatever. But like, after I open the new one, have you experimented with how it's going to feel for someone who isn't a new user, like for someone who's maybe in the CrossFit space, have been using Romwod for 5 years or whatever?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, of course, like that was part of the reason what we originally started with the foundation. We said, let's take everything that we love about Romwod to this day, and everything that we've gathered that people would like to see on the platform, but then also where we think, training and health and wellness is also going. So obviously everything's not going to get launched at once, and it'll be an evolution, and we'll, trickle things out. But where content is going is that I think the best thing that kind of CrossFit has done in that space has done in training is shown that functional fitness, and the way that we have shown you need mobility, you need strength, you need all these things. And that's what creates the best methodology for training, for whatever sport you're participating in. We kind of want to be the portion of that is mobility, and that's part of the foundation for your training piece. So that has just shown us that we can take kind of what we've built as a base and as a foundation for a platform, but then start putting in other pieces to it that help us grow and help us kind of expand to many more communities inside of many more spaces. So that's a lot more corrective, a lot more educational stuff. I think educational is the ability to empower someone and kind of like help them learn about also what they're feeling with their body and all that stuff is very important to retention of something, and being able to be like, okay, like I kind of know what this is now. I'm gonna be looking for mobility for my hamstring because I actually understand what the back of my leg is now, stuff like that. But then also being able to still click and play and watch your 18 to 22 minute routine that's more meditative and allowing yourself to slow down and relax. That was a huge portion for Romwod for me. So there'll be a lot of new stuff that starts trickling out, and there's going to be a lot of things that people still loved about our platform that we're just evolving and tweaking to be able to give some of the best experience they can through mobility.
Is pliability going to have the same style of Romwod mats that kind of click at, like roll out and click?
Of course.
Because I think that is probably my biggest gripe in like just any kind of fitness is how fucking stupid yoga mats are. That like you roll it out and then you're like kind of standing on it weird for like 5 minutes trying to get it to flatten, and then you turn it upside down and roll it back the other way a bit, whatever. I've always seen the Romwod ones and I was like, how is everybody not doing this? That it seems so basically obvious that it just clicks into place or whatever. Because I remember watching a video of, I think it was James Newbury or someone on like rocks at the ocean, and he just like rolled out his mat, and I was like, bullshit, that'd flick back up, and then I like actually looked at the mat and I was like, oh, actually, yeah, it probably would work. That's pretty clever.
Yeah, those mats have been literally 7 years in development, iteration, and testing. We work with a vendor that literally does the mats for the Olympics and such, and they're a great partner of ours, and we've just continued to take user feedback, and we consider it to be a strong part of our product. Just the fact that it's an actual mat, not a piece of foam laying on the floor.
Yeah. With pliability, then, is there, so like say Cody mentioned there, the kind of meditative pieces, the kind of longer form, like full body routines, or and I know you do like kind of, I guess, like workout specific warm-ups and stuff, and like area specific warm-ups or whatever, or cool downs and stuff. Is there going to be other things like say outside of your classic, what I'm picturing as CrossFit mobility of like pigeon stretch, couch stretch, like that kind of stuff? Is there going to be other things outside of those mobility pieces that are going to be launched, like other things that maybe me or other people wouldn't have thought like connected in with that, if you know what I mean?
I'll speak to a quick tech side of it, and then let Cody speak on the practical side of it. But something we've been working on heavily is we're still coming up with a clever name for it, but it's effectively our mobility test. Our app has the capacity to put you through a series of movements, and through our own proprietary technology, recommend routines. Find deficiencies in your mobility, find issues, and say like, hey, you should be working on this, or this is a target area. And what we found is the tech that we're building there is very proudly becoming so good that we needed to be able to recommend much more specific content to pair with it. So the test effectively helps pair a lot of the content that Cody's been heading up and building to create a you can still have your meditative kind of comprehensive Romwod side, but then you also have a very specific, hey, I got something going on with my shoulder. How do we work on that? And Cody can explain more in detail the content coming up.
Is that, is that going to be like a number? Like, is that going to say like, oh, your shoulder's at 2 out of 10, or your hip is at 9 out of 10, so you don't need to worry about your hip, but your right hip is screwed, that's a 1 out of 10, you need to get a replacement or whatever? Is it going to be like literally a scale, like a sliding scale like that?
It is. So the pliability score, which is what we're terming it as, it'd be an overall mobility score for the entire body, but then it's broken into sub-scores between different joints and different areas of the body. It's a lot easier to see in the app. It's a human really with graphs and stuff all over it. But as we build this technology, I think people will find it very valuable, not only to be able to maybe catch things that they knew or didn't know, but they'll be able to see their progress and improvement through things that we're feeding on the platform to help them.
Yeah, and then from a programming standpoint, I think is if anyone has ever experienced injury in some sort of form, you've gone through PT, and there's also been corrective and prehab and all these other kind of movements and mobility, stability, all these things that you start learning how to keep your body healthy. So for me, I've gone through a couple of those and just kind of understanding what people needed from years of coaching and then also being an athlete. For me, it was more or less bringing in a lot of the stuff that Scott said. So if there's, having a specific problem inside of the shoulder, understanding what I might need there to rehab it, but then also to maintain that. And if I'm feeling something in a specific place, to be able to actually hone in on that. So something as simple as foam rolling or showing someone how to properly use a lacrosse ball or voodoo floss. These are all things that, we take for granted if you've had the experience to kind of work with someone, but things that people may not know actually properly how to do. Those are just examples of also like obviously movements, but there's a lot more that just moving the body in specific ways helps open and, strengthen and stabilize certain joints and muscles. So there'll be a lot of different kind of methodologies that are brought to the app, I think, eventually, and we'll start trickling those out. But I mean, it's a lot of things that we believe in that build a very good foundation and keep mobility not only diverse, but done and still the way that we believe mobility should be done.
You mentioned there like that some people have experience, like say you'd obviously know from your time competing, like what a tight hip flexor feels like, and you'd also know the remedy for it, or you'd have probably 5 different potential remedies for it, and that if you, I don't know, do like a couch stretch versus a couch stretch and squeeze your glute, that it feels different, or you put your hand up and it feels different, or whatever. So I'm guessing they're the kind of things you're talking about with that would be covered. But I suppose I'm curious, like, where does that come from? Like, is there like a team of movement experts that design each of the things? Like, where do you get the expertise, I guess, to put this into an actual digestible like piece of technology?
Yeah, so behind our programming, there's multiple subject matter experts that we've consult with and that help write the programming. So all the stuff that we put on the platform has crossed through many eyes, and it's really cool because a lot of the stuff that we've done recently is we actually get to have some of those subject matter experts kind of consult with people that live in specific roles, as in either sports or they're part of this community, and they kind of just absorb the information, and that's what helps them build with their experience and knowledge, and day to day. If some of them are still working in the field, 9 to 5 day to day, seeing patients, stuff like that, kind of absorb what they're taking and be able to put into our programming, and then I get to kind of help narrate what it should look like and which directions I want it to go in a bit, to kind of fit our app and overall give what we want as a product on the platform.
I was curious as well. So if someone stopped me and said, I'll give you like $10 for every mobility company or app you can name, I'd say I'd probably get like $60, like pretty without any effort at all. So when you look at like just CrossFit, which is like a micro community when you think of the larger scale of things, but it's very concentrated with like everything that there is in CrossFit. There's a lot of, do you know what I mean? Like every t-shirt company, there's a shit ton of t-shirt companies. Every like I don't know, like cardio specific coach, there's a lot of them. Every strength coach, there's a lot of them. Every lifting expert, there's a lot of them. Like, how do you separate yourself out from the competition when there's so much competition in a very concentrated area? Like CrossFit is a very small area, and then there's a lot of mobility, either programs, coaches, or even I guess you're also you know, like kind of in competition with like physios, like as in rehab physios. You're like, there's a little bit of competition there as well. Like obviously there's a difference between hands-on and an app and stuff like that. You know, there's times for both, but like you really are competing against a lot to get a name for yourself, to be noticed, to be recognized, and to be like the, you know, like the top of the search on Google kind of thing. But in the actual zeitgeist, like out and about in the community, you want Romwod and now pliability to be like the name that comes to mind straight away. Like that's what every company wants, is they want to be the one that pops up. Is it difficult separating yourself out? Like, is it difficult separating yourself from the other companies that are out there? And I guess a second question on that would be, is it hard when you see, because say the stuff that you're talking about, and it's obviously different technology and it's technology you're very proud of, but like when you've seen, say, in the last 12 to 18 months, another company or other companies doing something, are you like, oh, God damn it, like why could they not wait another 6 months or whatever? Or are you just that confident in what you're doing that it's like, yeah, that's fine, it's just an inferior product and ours will just trump it?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it really comes down to it's a confidence in our platform and in our strategy. You know, of course, it's frustrating to see certain things launched and see things go on, but the way I do business is it's really thinking, you know, as many steps ahead as you can in business, right? Like you can't predict everything, but this is something that we've been working on for enough time with enough data backed, and we have one major advantage, and that is Romwod services customers in over 100 countries. The data points that we have coming in, like when we want to test something or when we want to know something, it's very easy to find out, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Do people like it? Do they not like it? We have this huge testing bed effectively. So when it comes to our competitive advantage, it really does come down to our current customer base and the fact that we've built every piece of technology we have. So the flexibility in that, no pun intended, is we can continue to adapt and build at our pace and with real world data, real world feedback on what customers want, what works for them, and actually be able to implement it. We're not, you know, licensing it from a third party or figuring out, you know, how to bring it to our platform. We can simply build it.
That pun was very much intended, and I'm okay with it. You don't have to apologize for stuff like that. Cody, from your perspective, then, when you see, so when you see other companies maybe like sponsoring large competitions, like sponsoring the games or sponsoring, you know, like being the headline sponsor for things like the games or Wadapalooza or whatever, or when you see like the upper echelon athletes that are going to be in people's consciousness at, you know, pretty much year round, when you see those being announced as working with other companies, or like, do you feel pressure from that? Do you feel like, is there a, what would you call it? Like, is there an urge to be reactive? Is there an urge to be like, oh, maybe we should be doing something too. Maybe we should be more active in what we're doing.
No, I think it's all part of the strategy. I think we have goals as a company, and our goal is to give the best, you know, product to our users that we can and help grow inside of multiple communities. And I think a lot of the time that obviously perception is something, but a lot of the time I think it's important to kind of take a step back and be like, are we doing the best thing that we can for the 99%? And sometimes sponsoring an event or doing something like that isn't it. And for us, we've been able to grow, I think, the past 2 years in many, many ways that will be the best thing for our users and for pliability going forward. And I think that's the right decision. That's the decision that we've been making. So we'll continue to make those as well. I think that it's in fitness, it's constantly evolving and constantly growing. And there's always going to be the people that have to clear the path and set the direction. And that's what we're planning to do inside of mobility and inside of that sector. We're going to be the, you know, the leading one in sport, and we're going to drive and push and evolve and do the best we can. And whatever that, you know, we feel like that has to be made to do that, we're going to do it.
So you mentioned other sports, and I know so I've seen like, what would you call it? Like a beta test or whatever of the website. And I've seen like some, you know, like silhouettes and pictures and stuff of other athletes that don't have a barbell or a skipping rope or whatever in their hands. When you look at other sports, you know, I guess like maladies that people have in the, you know, general population would be like fairly standard across the board of, you know, like sore backs and, you know, like there's a certain predictability to it, I guess. Is it the same then for, say, like golf? Like, do you go to like an expert in golf and say like, right, what are the common problems that people have? How can we fix that? Like, what are the best fixes for it? And then you put a program together for that. And then do you go to like, you know, I don't know, a backs coach in rugby and say, what are the specific things? Like how micro do you make your investigations into these other avenues, I guess?
Yeah. So, I mean, when we're approaching another avenue, like it's very similar to what you just said. So I believe like there's a foundation of, you know, specific kind of mobility things that we all need because we're all, as humans, we sit too much, everyone. And there's certain things, like I said, that people have adapted throughout the years of training that we all need to do. Like people love to squat, people love to deadlift, people love to press, and you need specific mobility to be able to do that properly and healthy and be able to have longevity within that. But when entering other sports as a golfer is going to need a lot more of a rotational mobility than maybe a CrossFitter would. So when entering other sports, what we do is we take the knowledge that we know for a foundation of our mobility, but then we also ask them questions from, you know, people that play golf, from professionals to, you know, golf PTs to golf trainers, and be like, you know, what are the most common injuries you see in the sport? Why is this happening? Where are people, you know, hypermobile? Where are they not mobile enough? And we absorb as much information as we can. And from there, we start, you know, kind of contracting mobility specific stuff for that sport. And that is the whole portion of pliability that's going to allow you to get a lot more granular inside of training or inside of specific body areas that you want to actually work on, but then still be able to be like, well, just because I'm a golfer doesn't mean I don't squat. You know, having strong legs and strong hips will help me definitely in my golf swing and driving a ball. So, yeah, but it's very much like you just said.
Stallings, he's proof in the pudding there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of athletes that are becoming, and I think there's only going to be more and more athletes that are becoming that, proving that functional fitness is the best way to train. And I think we all get caught up so much that functional fitness like are only the movements that you see in the open, and that's so not true. Functional fitness is any movement that's moving through, that's constantly varied, that you can do it, you know, fast, slow, whatever it is, and you're moving through ranges of motions. It's the best way to train for whatever sport that is. So I think there's throughout the next couple of years, there's going to be a lot of athletes that come out and be like, this is the way I train, and it helps me on the soccer field, you know, the downhill skiing, golf, whatever it is. That's where I definitely think that's the way training is evolving for sure.
Are some sports harder than others to because like just to say, when you said soccer there, I was thinking I'm watching that All or Nothing Arsenal on Amazon Prime at the minute, and like the professional teams have some setup, like it's crazy the detail they go into, and the just the equipment they have, the space they have, the experts they have just on tap. Now obviously we're talking about the top like athletes there. Is it more difficult to approach some sports than other sports? Like, is it more difficult to approach, like, is it easier to approach, like, say, a golfer than it is to approach, like, I don't know, a basketball team? Like, is it easier? Are some sports proving to be like, oh, that was a lot more straightforward than I thought it was going to be, and like, oh, that was way more difficult than I thought it was going to be?
Well, I think some sports training relatively kind of stays the same, as like a CrossFitter trains probably very similar to a weightlifter, and then as kind of to like a football player. A football player might do more explosive stuff, but I mean, we grew up, if you played football, you grew up benching, deadlifting, pressing, squatting. Like those are movements you do. I mean, in the NFL combine, they still do like the 20 rep max bench press or whatever. So I think definitely there are sports that you start to enter, like swimming or, you know, soccer, that they possibly don't need the raw, you know, strength of power cleaner, stuff like that, but there's still explosive work that, you know, causes stress on joints and muscles, and they still need to be able to learn to like keep those healthy and keep them, you know, good and have longevity with whatever profession they're doing or just activity they're doing.
Are we going to see so say I guess now if I picture Romwod, I picture Pat Fellner. Am I gonna in 6 months' time picture pliability and picture like Rory McIlroy, or like am I going to be picturing? Are you going to have those kind of? Because obviously the way that in my head, the way that advertising has worked in CrossFit has been pick an athlete, support them, work with them. They'll be your voice. They'll be your tannoy or whatever. Is it the same in other sports? Or are you finding that it's different? That it works differently?
Scott, you want to speak on this? You want me to?
Oh, I mean, I can speak on it a little bit. I think the strategy for us, it's evolved over the years. I mean, we used to be a very, we've always supported our athletes and had them be huge voices of the brand, but we also were a very event sponsorship heavy brand. And we felt that was a way of supporting the community and building within CrossFit. And it's not that strategy's changed. It's that we found we can reach the community at a much more grassroots level through like athlete relationships. And I think that will continue to transcend into other sports. I think we'll definitely, build these relationships organically with these athletes, find out, through their sport and understand, what matters to you and how do we build content that works there. But I do think we'll follow that strategy going forward. And as far as working with events, it'll be, we'd love to work with events that makes sense for us. I think it's just really about, how do we connect with the community and does that make sense?
Is there any, I guess selfishly, I'm most interested in CrossFit. Is there any CrossFit athletes that are going to be announced as pliability athletes that people maybe don't know yet? Or is that like, oh no, we can't talk about that?
Kind of embargoed for the moment, but I mean, the current team continues. Like that's one thing I can say is, we'll remain rooted in CrossFit and rooted in the training space in a way that is very intentional. And our team is excited to be coming on board with us for that. So the team Romwod today will be coming forward as team pliability with some new and exciting additions in the future.
Oh, okay. That's a nice tease. I like that. Some new and exciting additions. Okay. With the changing, like, is there any part of you, I know you've been planning it for a while, but is there any part of you that's kind of like mourning a bit, like the fact that like Romwod like won't be Romwod anymore, that it'll be something different? Is it like sending your kid off to college? Is it like, that you're kind of this like stage, this gestation stage is over and now you're moving from like toddler into like elementary school or whatever? You're kind of going, bye, like have a good day.
I can genuinely say it's more excitement than anything else. I mean, something we've worked for a long time and we truly believe in. We've invested a lot in both time and resources. So I think now it's been going on long enough behind the scenes. There's a lot of excitement about finally being able to peel back the layers and show the world.
Yeah. Has it been frustrating? So say, Cody, you've been involved for coming up on 3-ish years, 2 years anyway. Is it hard? Has it been hard, like keeping your mouth shut, like when you've been talking to, or people are asking you about Romwod and you're like, yeah, everything's staying the same, nothing's changing there?
I mean, I think that we obviously, again, through COVID in the beginning, it was more or less we weren't seeing as many people, so you didn't have to ask the question. But definitely more recent, it's been like, okay, we're starting to see some things going on and people are messaging like, what's going on, what's the big thing. But yeah, I mean, it's just like Scott said, it's exciting to be able to finally show people and be able to kind of get into what we've been working on so long. And I'm excited for the launch, but I'm also excited for what's to come, because I think there's a lot of like new stuff that's going to be good, and it'll help. It'll come full circle, and it's gonna feel good when we get to see it.
Very much so. And there's like a trailing effect to that as well. Like the launch September 7th is just step one, and that's not like an over tease, but like everything is scoped out to release over time, so we can continue to test and continue to evolve. But looking at a beginning of next year or so, we should be in a really good place with showing the world on what we're looking to do.
It must be really hard not to just release everything on the 7th. Like, I know if I have 2 interviews saved, I'm like, oh, maybe I should just release them the day after each other. Like, I don't like holding on to stuff. It must be so hard not to just be like, just do everything, just press go and just do everything at once and see what happens.
It's even when you're talking like, I'll sneak a few things of, apparel drops or partnerships or some really big integrations that have been in development for some time. Like, we're excited to get those released, but it makes a lot more sense for the business, as you can imagine, to give those announcements space to breathe on their own.
Yeah, but I guess the important thing is that I got out of you that there's apparel drops and athlete announcements and integrations that people can expect. So that's all that really matters from that interaction. I usually do like a quick fire, a kind of either or thing, but I thought I'd change up a little bit for you. So I was curious, Cody, you can go first, and this might be the same answer for both. But what is your favorite and least favorite stretch to do?
Saddle.
Okay.
Yeah, kills me. That one just hurts me.
Is that the one where you're?
Yeah, so it's like you're on your kind of sitting on your shins and on your ankles, and you lean back.
Yeah, the one that I see. So when I see people doing that one, I'm like, oh, okay. And then I get down and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, it's one that you either go all the way back or you're like
you're like a table.
Yeah, exactly. And probably I would say favorite is like pigeon. I think that we just all should do pigeon more. It's the glute medius muscle in the back that kind of connects, that back little strip between your hip and your sacrum, and it gets tight from sitting. So I think pigeon is one that like we could all spend 2 to 3 minutes in a day on each side, and everyone in the world would benefit from it for sure.
That's the one where you're kind of in a 7, like your shin is.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Another one where I see like, and your shins should be parallel. And I'm like, no. It's like I'm making a very acute angle here with my. What about you, Scott? What's your favorite and least favorite?
My favorite would probably be. I'll go more of the shoulders, like child's pose.
Okay.
Really getting.
I can do that one.
Yeah, my shoulders for whatever reason just like it's nice to break them up a little bit. Least favorite would have to be like a sumo squat, just sitting down. Like there's a discomfort to just having to hold a low squat for long periods of time.
Yeah, definitely sumo as well. I remember like ages ago our gym did like yoga. There used to be an instructor came in and did yoga, and I remember like, oh, it was awful. Like I remember thinking like this is gonna be so relaxing and so like it's gonna feel like I'm doing something, but I'm not doing something. It's gonna be great. And like that, it was like, oh, now we're gonna do like crow or whatever. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then the only time I ever enjoyed it was there was about like maybe a minute and a half at the end of everyone where it was like literally just lie face down on the ground with your hands by your pockets and just don't do anything. And I was like, at that point, I was like, this is what I'm after. This is the feeling. This is the feeling of like mobility that I really want. It's just like lying face down. It's definitely very humbling when, it's crazy. Especially like I have kids, and when you see like my whatever, like 1-year-old walking over and just doing an absolutely perfect squat to bend down and pick something up, or like holding something out in front of himself but still squatting and not falling over, and it's like, man, if I go past my hips at all, I'm gone now at this stage.
I mean, that's the beautiful part about it, but then the sad part is like you see someone at 16 and they've already lost it. Like,
oh man, I teach. Oh, it's so fucking depressing. Like I'm not a beacon of health and fitness, and I don't like claim to be, but like in my school, like it's so like we do like active school week, which is probably a problem in itself, the fact that we have to have a week dedicated to something like in the year, or else it just won't happen. But like in our school, it's like PE, like phys ed or whatever, is like dodgeball or it doesn't happen. And then like we did this thing where we were like, right, we'll do stations and we'll have like a little picture on each wall, and it'd be like a Tabata kind of thing, and you move on and do the next thing. And it was like, oh, we're going to do like squats, and just like the kids are, it's just mind-boggling like how bad to just the squat. And it's like, no, like keep your heels down, and then like it's just like put your heels down, and then it's like, oh, your feet, like every second person was just so wrong in such a different way to the last person. And it's like, how is this, like, how do you have the same basic physiology, but it's so vastly different? And I know it's probably the same for coaches when new members come in and they're like, how are you so different from the last guy that was just here? But I think like, it's crazy. It is terrifying. It's just terrifying when you see kids and you're like, oh, do a squat. And it's just like, no, like none of that. So little of that was right.
From the age of 5, when most kids are put into school, they're sitting 6 to 8 hours a day, all the way up till 20, 22 when you get out of school, but then you go into a job that you might sit from 9 to 5. So, I mean, it's sad. It's definitely, it's something that I've always wondered the same. Like I used to see it when I used to coach my high school kids and, to the football team and all that. I'm like, 10 years ago, you had the best mobility. Everyone could admire it, just like you're talking about. But now like it's at this. So, I mean, it's definitely a real world thing, and it's like mobility is something that I think we all need to take more seriously and bring into part of our foundation, because I think it also is part of being human, is being able to move through those things and stuff.
But it's remarkable as well how. And I've been guilty of this myself, where it's like, right, I'm going to give myself 6 months to get really good at like running or the assault bike, or like get really strong, increase my bench or increase my whatever. And it's like, but I've never thought like, oh, I'm going to give myself 6 months to, get my hips better or whatever. But I had, so this is kind of funny, but it actually, Jamie Simmons in this story. So I was at Strength and Depth, and I went back into the athlete area, and I had like a knot in my groin for ages. And it was like for about a month, and I was like, it's really sore, but I don't have a massage gun. I was like, the whole time I had it, I was like, all I need is a massage gun and this would be gone. Like, I know it'll be gone. So I got back there and I was like pummeling my groin with a massage gun. And I looked up and locked eyes with Jamie, who immediately turned to her friend and was like, the fuck is that guy doing? Because it looked like I was just like on my groin, like on my junk with the massage gun. And like I was too far away to be like, it's not what it looks like. There was no point. Like it was just like, so what happened then was I talked to a physio friend of mine, and he was like, oh, it could be one or two things. It could be a hernia, or it could be like your hip, like it could be a tightness in your hip or whatever. And he got me to do that, where you sit like with your knees together and you like separate out your heel away from each other. And like my left side, I remember doing it, like I was sitting looking at myself, left side, like, well above 45 degrees. I was like, there's nothing wrong with these hips. And then I went to do my right. And as soon as my heel left my foot, my hip, hamstring, glute, and quad all cramped simultaneously. And I was like, okay, yeah, there might be a small problem there. But like within a week of just doing like 3 little exercises he gave me, out 45. So it's crazy how quickly you can improve. Like, you're never going to be able to do that. I'm never going to be able to do that fucking saddle pose. But like, I will get closer to it in a very short space of time. Like, you can fix major deficiencies in a very short space of time. Yeah,
consistency is key. It definitely is. I mean, just the consistent spending time on it will, slowly get you there and help to maintain at least a, level of not having to be like, crap, I need to find something now because I get this nagging pain.
Yeah. Turned out it was a hernia, by the way. So I was actually doing at Strength and Depth was I was massage gunning a hernia without knowing I was. And I was like, this is sore, but it's definitely going to pay off. Like, it must be a really bad knot. And it's like, no, it's your fucking intestines. But yeah, no, it's fine. It just shows how hardy I am. I didn't even bat an eyelid. It was fine. Well, listen, on that note, thank you for coming on, and best of luck with the launch. I'm looking forward to seeing pliability just everywhere. And it's great. It's exciting. It's like, I mean, you're excited about it, but I just can't help but be terrified for changing just such a big change. Like, it takes such guts to change something so drastic and to leave the familiar for, something that's unfamiliar, that's scary. So I admire you guys for doing it. And yeah, best of luck with everything. I'm sure it'll be a roaring success, and I look forward to seeing everything coming out.
Oh, we appreciate it. And thank you for having us on.
Appreciate your time as well.